another reason that I thought that I could never be a therapist is because people would constantly ask me, "How are you going to be a therapist if you can't sit still?" Because even to this day, I still can't sit still. And people would say to me, I have the ADHD that is, I'm very, very sensitive. So I'm sensitive to light, sound, touch, everything. And people would ask me all the time, how are you going to sit in a therapy session if someone is popping their gum, which is one of my, makes me so anxious. Like
Yeah.
my skin is crawling. And I was like, well, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And you know what? I can truthfully say that I have not ever had a client walk out of my office because of gum popping or.
Hey everyone, I'm Megs, and you're listening to the Mindful Megs podcast, Organizing an ADHD Brain, where you will hear stories from me and others on how we organize both our brains and our lives while living with ADHD. We talk about how ADHD can be your superpower if you know how to harness it. I found out I had ADHD 2 years ago, and it was very difficult for me to find acceptance. Now that I know so much, I want to share what I know and help others understand that this diagnosis is not your downfall. It's a eureka moment where you can now understand how your brain operates and how to figure out how to thrive. You can expect to feel inspired, like you're not alone, and learn about so many of the incredible organizational tools there are to help your head stay on straight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of my interview with Bailey Pilot. I'm super pumped to bring you this second part, and she's got some really insightful information about ADHD and how it affects women. So I highly recommend go checking out her TikToks and her Instagram. She's always posting videos. I am so impressed with her. So today we continue our interview with talk about getting up early in the morning, which is typically not common with people with ADHD. She talks about going to the gym. I actually pulled the end of our first part of the interview and stuck it onto the first part of the second interview just so that everything would have continuity here. We talk a little bit about parenting and ADHD, and I share about my daughter who we think has ADHD. And it's been so interesting learning so much about myself so that I can show up and be a better mom to her. We talk briefly about that. I'd love to do more on the topic. And if you guys are interested and have questions, I'd love to do some more research. So share with me what you want to know, and I can totally do another episode on that. I mentioned Neurodiversity Week while we had this interview. I actually recorded this interview with Bailey weeks ago. So this was earlier in the year, but there are a ton of different celebrations throughout the year. So April specifically is a celebration of autism. We're now in May, so happy May 1st. And there's a ton of people talking about and advocating for people with neurodiverse brains out there. It's pretty fascinating because when I first stepped into this space, I was like, who's having this conversation? Is anyone having this conversation? And the answer is yes, so many people. And so now that I'm in this space, I'm so proud to be surrounded by people who are changing the narrative with ADHD and want to help people see it as a superpower or as a way of understanding that you're not broken. We talk about that a lot in this episode, that your brain just works differently. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You just have to learn how your brain works so that you can work alongside it and stop trying to do things that work for other people that might not work for you. There's nothing wrong with trying new things and different things that can help you. Bailey also jumps into talking about therapy and what she does as a therapist, helping organize people's brains when they come to see her. And I love that aspect. When you have ADHD, oftentimes you have so much going on in your head. It's fast, fast, fast. We're always on to the next thing that we're thinking about. Or I know that I have trouble with catastrophizing situations. I'll take something, I will take it to the next level of like what could happen or worrying. It's so interesting being able to work one on one with someone who can help you organize your thoughts in a way that you understand your own tendencies so that you don't take yourself to dark places. You don't take yourself to places that can tear you down. So I highly recommend therapy for anyone looking. And Bailey is accepting new clients in the state of New York. The last part of this interview, Bailey dropped some beautiful words for those of you that are just finding out that you have ADHD, or honestly, it just felt so good to hear it. As someone who was late diagnosed myself, I'm still working through understanding what that looks like. And I'm so excited. I just really am. This week has just been kind of crazy, and I hope y'all are doing really great. I'm just here to remind you that it's okay to stop and take care of yourself. Sometimes when our brains won't stop, we feel like our bodies can't stop and that we need to continuously do things to make us feel better. I was even talking to someone yesterday about how if you're sick and your brain just keeps going, it almost feels like we need to go and do all of these things before we can sit down and rest. Except that once we get up and do all the things and then we rest, there's still other things to do. It's not like we're ever going to be done doing the things that are on our to-do list. And when we actually take time to give ourselves the space to rest, it takes us to the next level as far as loving our own bodies, which helps us show up better for other people. So thank you for all of your support. Without further ado, I am here to bring you Bailey Pilot Part 2. Take it away.
We've developed this habit where we get up in the morning and the first thing we do in the morning is we go to the gym and we work out. And that has been game changer for me, getting up and going to the gym, because it gives me one, when I get to the gym, I'm still not even fully awake. I'm still processing, but it gets me moving and it gets me like my body active, and it really starts to set the tone for my day. And when you work out, you release endorphins, the happy feelings. So if I get up and go to the gym and I'm working out and I'm releasing all these happy feelings, I'm more likely to have a better day. And then on top of that, there's so much research out there that has said that for up to like 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes after work exercising, ADHD executive functioning increases. So yes, yeah, and so that's why we do it, because we didn't know this. I think it just was, we didn't make the connection until I started doing all this research and was working towards my certification. I was like, oh my God, that's why we do it. That's why we get up, because everyone thinks we're crazy for getting up and going to the gym every day. And I was like, no, that's why, because it literally helps both of us get out the door on time. It helps us
Yes.
organize our morning so that we can do what we need to do.
I get up at 5 a.m. every single morning, and I've never been a morning person. People look at me and they're like, I'm not a morning person. I'm like, me freaking neither. But I'm telling you about this because I think it's important. And I used to stay up so late. And part of it, and I've read now that it's because you're so overwhelmed sometimes from everything happened during the day that you're not ready to go to sleep because you know that the next day is going to come so fast.
Yeah.
I've been getting up at 5 a.m. for over a year now. I actually just started moving it to 4:30 because I was like, I need more. I need more time in the morning. I get up and I meditate and I journal and I do gratitude, and then I'm always learning something. I actually color. So I'll put something on so that I can listen, but then I color so that my hands are doing something so that I am not trying to go on my phone or anything like that. But I think that is so cool. And I think what's really neat about ADHD is we self medicate by doing things that are going to make us feel so much better, like going to the gym or having a schedule. But until we realize that this is something that actually promotes our brains working better, we're like, oh, we've already implemented that. Like that's a tool that I've been using for so long. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize how much my brain was just craving it. And it's something I need to do to thrive. When I first found out about ADHD, I had so many preconceived thoughts about what it was and what it was like. And now that I know so much, it's almost hard for me to talk about because I feel like everyone already knows, but there's still so many people out there saying, "Oh, you're hyper?" No, I'm a human and I am an adult and a mom. And so, when you work with people for the first time with ADHD, as a medical professional, you're working with them to understand what it is, right? And kind of work through the process of accepting And then do you also coach them through how to manage it?
Yeah, there is coaching through how to manage it. The short answer is yes, but I also like to say yes and, because I don't want people to get confused with what that means, because oftentimes when we hear coaching, or a lot of therapists who claim to work with ADHD heavily rely on what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And that requires changing our thought patterns, or there is also a part of cognitive behavioral therapy is also just behavioral therapy. And there is this stigma in therapy world that behavioral therapy is the best form of therapy for ADHDers. And in my experience and in my work with especially women who are late diagnosed ADHD, is that is not the best therapy for them. And what I do when it comes to teaching women how to manage their ADHD is actually teaching them to acknowledge and start working with their brain, not against their brain. So a lot of my work is deconstructing and getting rid of the idea that we have to do things the way that other people do things, but instead adapting things to be done in a way that makes sense to us, but we're still getting the same thing done.
It makes a million percent sense. I was just thinking of an example. My daughter is having a really hard time reading right now, and she's in first grade. And the teacher reached out to me and she shared with me an experience where my she kind of just shut down at school. And oh my gosh, she's my sweet angel, so can obviously do nothing wrong. And I was really concerned, and this kind of hit the nail on the head. I've thought that she's had ADHD for a while. We haven't gotten an official diagnosis. But when I started talking with the teacher, I said, I think she might have ADHD. Is it okay if she brings a fidget toy to school and sees how we can work with that and what that looks like? She's like, yes, anything you think might help her in her learning so that she can grow and I can support all the way. I even offered to buy fidget toys for the entire class. She's like, no, it's fine, because she said that they talk to the kids quite often about how not everyone's going to have the same learning style as you. So if someone's playing with something so that they can stay focused, that is their way of doing it. You don't necessarily need that depending on what you're working through. So I think that that's really, really cool that you're teaching women how to do that, because I'm still learning myself. And I'm really proud to be teaching my daughter, because the truth is I don't know what to do for her sometimes, and I'm learning, and I'm going to put my best foot out there every single time.
I think
So
it's really important what you're doing.
thank
It,
you.
it is. I think what's beautiful about seeing women who are moms getting these late diagnoses and going through this self-discovery is, in a lot of ways, I'm sure you've probably recognized this, is you're undoing a lot of the harm that was done to you.
Yes. And gosh, that's hard. I've been thinking about that more and more lately, because it's easy to watch a TikTok video and be like, oh, what a great idea. I would love to parent that way. But when you've learned how to parent a certain way your entire life,
Mm.
it's very hard to teach yourself a new way when it's not what you've known.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really powerful to say that. And I think what's really neat about millennials, Gen Z, these generations that are up and coming, they are trying so hard to unlearn so many of the things that they were taught growing up. And I think social media is such a powerful tool that we have in our corner, because it's not something that's hidden. People are talking about it. People are being very vocal about what they don't want to happen to their kids, because they don't want them to have to deal with adulthood the way that they are. So they're parenting differently. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother episode.
It
Um,
is.
I've been attending Neurodiversity Celebration Week this week. It's a company in UK that's putting it on, and there's a bunch of free events. And I shared this with you in an email, but I wanted to repeat it because I've been asking people what is their superpower when it comes to ADHD. I've gotten so many different responses, and I'm still sticking with it. That superpower is a fine word to say. I only say that because I heard Simon Sinek say it, and then Peter Shankman in their books and talking about it. And that made me feel like, okay, maybe I'm incredible and I just haven't seen it yet. right? But then someone at this conference said, ADHD is not a superpower. It is super powerful. And I was like, ooh, I like that too.
Mhm.
And it's not a superpower in the literal sense, like you can fly, but there are some really incredible things about our brains and what we can do. And so I'm curious, what do you feel is super powerful about your brain and how it works?
I've actually been thinking about this question because I was reflecting on it and I have my answer. It's here. And I've been trying to figure out how to frame it. But I think what makes my ADHD super powerful is because I have such unique experiences that have really shaped me throughout my life to give me my ADHD superpower, which is empathy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that from so many people is we feel hard, real
Mhm.
hard. That's beautiful.
That's what I think about with therapy is that each client comes with so much stuff that they don't know what to do with it. And what I do is I help them organize their brain. I help them take everything that has gotten muddled together and tease it apart and make sense of it and put it where it needs to be. But before we put anything where it needs to be, is we need to nurture it first. And we need to understand like how it got to where it is and why it's there. And we give it some empathy and compassion. And then we find its place where it needs to be, not wrapped up with something else that it doesn't need to be wrapped up with, and then organizing their brains in that way.
What just sparks is something I've been working on myself is allowing myself to love who I was as a kid. Sometimes when you think of yourself and the things that you've been through, you can go back to that place in your brain where you were at that time and really channel those feelings. But I've been working on just visualizing, even just closing my eyes and going back to me as 10, me as 15, me at 19, and giving myself a hug and
Yeah.
saying, it's going to be okay. And you got this. And you're going to do some really amazing things. And it's okay that you don't know everything. And I love the way that you talked about organizing the brain. Yes. And there's like when we have more structure in our lives, organizing our day, organizing our stuff, organizing our brains in a way that really just helps us understand it more. I just feel like I've been able to understand things in a way that I never really understood before. And I think it's because of ADHD, because like my brain will take me on these trails to understand my life in a way that I've just never really even thought to go down before. And I think that's one of the powers that I have.
I totally agree with that. You know, I left this out earlier, but another reason that I thought that I could never be a therapist is because people would constantly ask me, how are you going to be a therapist if you can't sit still? Because even to this day, I still can't sit still. And people would say to me, I have the ADHD that is, I'm very, very sensitive. So I'm sensitive to light, sound, touch, everything. And people would ask me all the time, how are you going to sit in a therapy session if someone is popping their gum, which is one of my, makes me so anxious. Like
Yeah.
my skin is crawling. And I was like, well, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And you know what? I can truthfully say that I've not ever had a client walk out of my office because of gum popping, and no one has walked out of my office because I move around a lot. And if anything, we find it as a way to relate, but also to help normalize that we don't have to sit still to be in therapy.
Yeah, I like that so much. I play with silly putty. I literally been doing it the whole time, but I pop it. So especially when I'm doing a podcast interview, I have to remember like, Megan, stop popping it. You can't do that. Oh my gosh.
One thing that you said is about social media and how powerful it is, and the generations of mothers really, and well, parents, mothers and fathers, trying to be different parents and be in these involved parents, and learning to parent your daughter who potentially has ADHD. My my dad unfortunately passed away, but my mom, she is on social media, and she is one of my biggest fans on my TikTok and my Instagram. And same with my two younger siblings. And what's so funny is the more that I post and educate about ADHD, the more my mom goes, I get it now. I understand it. I understand myself now. I understand you now. And I understand what you needed from me. And I didn't know how to give it to you. And so that reparenting can even happen into adulthood. But I think that's really, even though I'm her daughter and, I'm posting on social media and she's watching the videos to support me, but she's not just watching the videos to support me. She's watching the videos and she's taking in this information and she's reflecting and she's coming back to me and she's reparenting me as an adult.
Oh my gosh. I'm holding back tears. That's beautiful. What a cool way to reconnect with your mom in a way that she truly sees you. I started this podcast and I have this business, and I also teach this course on infinite possibilities. And it's just about like learning how to believe in yourself and not talking negatively to yourself. So there's a whole nother thing. But I asked my family, it's been a month since I launched my podcast, and I was like, what do you guys think? And no one's listened to it. And I don't feel bad for myself because I've got amazing, like my mother in law listens to every single episode. Freaking love that. My sister-in-law has listened to almost every single episode. My husband is my biggest supporter. And as the youngest in my family, I feel like I haven't ever been seen by my family. And I think that's a lot of where I tried to cope in other ways. And so I think it's absolutely incredible that your mom listens to your podcast and is able to reflect with you on so many of the things that she's learning. And that's what I love about the generational connections that we have. I am a firm believer that we should not be against each other. We should all be working together for this greater purpose in the world. We can learn so much from the generations that have been here for so long. And then they can learn so much from the generations that are growing. And if we work together, there would be so much more beauty in this world. Anyways, that is dreams.
I feel that with you. Yeah, I agree.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Okay. When it comes to women or anyone finding out that they have ADHD for the first time, what is your advice to them?
My advice to them, my advice to anyone finding out they recently got diagnosed, you're not broken. I feel that oftentimes, and I even said it earlier, is we run around, we're trying to operate in this world and we constantly feel like we don't fit. And we go internally and we're like, what is wrong with me? And then on top of that, a lot of our symptoms in relation to executive functioning, we receive such negative messaging throughout our lives around laziness or incompetence or not being smart or our chaos. People will comment on how chaotic we are and how it feels chaotic to be around us. And all of those things hurt so much because they become a part of our sense of self. And it's really damaging to our development of sense of self. If you go and you receive this diagnosis, I hope you know that there's nothing wrong with you and there was never anything wrong with you to begin with, that you were being treated in a way that doesn't fit or work for you. And it's really sad and disheartening that the world doesn't adapt to us when it should. We should be adapting to all individual different needs that we're going to be expressing. But know that this new journey of understanding your own ADHD can be really exciting and exhilarating because now we get to tap into what makes you you, but we also get to tap into what works for you. And we can finally let go of trying to make ourselves fit where we're not supposed to and where we're not meant to fit.
Wow. You're dropping some major truth bombs and some incredible words today. I'm so thrilled to talk with you, and I can't wait to talk with you again. Let's do this again. Let's make this happen. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing and your vulnerability. It has been such a pleasure. Where can my listeners find you?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at The Way of Counseling. And then you can also check me out on my website, thewayofcounseling.com. And I think that's it. That's all the places where I am.
Heck yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we'll drop all those in the show notes below so people can connect with you. And oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I drop a new episode every Monday. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on the next episode, subscribe to my channel on YouTube, follow the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, And also share this podcast with someone who you think could benefit from it. I would appreciate that so much. My goal is to help people with ADHD understand that they're not broken. And the more people that listen, the more people we can help empower.
Oh, and before I forget, I put together a little template for myself. It's a PDF download for my daily to-do list. I only list 6 things on it a day. I know that sounds like so little, but if you're anything like me, that you make a ton of lists that never get checked off, and then next day you're making a list that's 30 things long and you can't seem to get it done, try this out. At the top, it's priorities, and then you list the things that you need to do with your priorities. Then you add it to your Google Calendar or something that's going to remind you. It has helped me so much. And then I'm constantly evolving it so that I can share and see how it helps people. And of course, share how it's helped me. I think no matter what, you can take a look at it and see if it's something that can elevate your life, even if you don't take it exactly how I do it, which is cool. So I'll drop the link for that below. It's always on my link tree, which I have down below in the show notes.
And I've included a link to Remedy Bath Skincare below. This is owned and operated by one of my favorite people who has been in business for a couple years now. And I have been using her CBD bath bombs for years, and they're so incredible. I've never had a bath bomb that smells or works better than this, and CBD is just an extra pressure taker offer, if those are the words you want to use. Check it out below. I also included my link. It's Meg Bathco, and you can save 10% off of your order. Another way you can support the podcast is by using my link if you want to try out HelloFresh. It's an amazing way to automate your grocery shopping and try new foods. It takes so much of the thinking out of planning for the week. My ADHD brain has been so appreciative of HelloFresh. We've actually been using for I think all of 2024 now. We've tried so many new foods, some that we didn't like as much as we have liked, but oh, so many amazing flavors. And I'm so thrilled to not have to think ahead to try to figure out what's for dinner, especially when my husband and I are managing jobs and then, of course, our kiddos at the same time. I want to reiterate, I am not a doctor, and most of the people I talk to are not doctors or medical professionals. What's really important here is that you shouldn't be using the show to diagnose. I wanted to make this show available to people who wanted to be able to relate to other people like them. I know I needed this tenfold when I first found out that I had ADHD, and I didn't know there were so many other people out there who had either gone through similar circumstances or were going through them at the same time as I was. So if this helps anyone feel like their brain works like other people's and we can relate to something, if you're trying to figure out if you have ADHD or not, please talk to your therapist or a medical professional so that you can truly understand what kind of options you have out there for support and, of course, for medicine. And then come here as you're along the ride for the journey and listen to people who are going through similar circumstances and understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of diagnosis. There's so many options and opportunities out there for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to hear from you.